It seemed wild that the president would hire people, or at least his campaign would hire people to break into an office, and also he was going to win the election easily.
Yeah.
So
it just seems silly that he would.
Well, it also, I don't know how if it's different now, but it seems so distant. Like that was a place so far away I could hardly imagine it. And we're watching on. I think we're watching on black and white TV, maybe color TV, but yeah. But it was also on all the time.
Yeah.
And you read about it, you talked about it in class. I mean, you knew all the characters. Yeah.
Since Monday, when President Nixon released the new tape, the smoking pistol of the Watergate evidence that tied it directly to him, events have been rushing toward one seemingly inevitable conclusion: removal from office. Now, if all reports are correct, and there's no reason to doubt them, Mr. Nixon has chosen to take that final step himself. More from Dan Rather.
According to his staff, unless the president has a sudden change of head and heart, his announcement will be resignation. He reached a tentative decision to do so Monday. Monday night, in a Potomac cruise aboard the yacht Sequoia, his daughters urged him not to do it. He agreed to reconsider. As of this hour, says his staff, he has not changed his mind. Last night at a family dinner upstairs in the White House, some of the family was in tears. The president was not. Presidential speechwriters worked through the night preparing a possible resignation address. The president himself worked on it early this morning. In late morning, Vice President Ford was summoned to the president's Oval Office. The meeting began at 11 a.m. Washington time. In an hour and 10 minutes, it was over. At 12:20 this afternoon, Presidential News Secretary Ronald Ziegler stepped before microphones and an overflow crowd of reporters in the White House briefing room.
I think it's different today because I think you see like a president as somebody that's probably flawed, that's probably some people like and some people don't like, and I think for some reason we viewed the president as like okay, this person was beyond reproach, even though there were scandals before, but how we were taught things in school was not critical like that. So now all of a sudden you had somebody that was doing something so underhanded and subterranean that you're like, wow, if this exists here, then what other levels does it exist? I mean, if the president's doing this, and really for no good reason. Yeah, and so all of a sudden you got into the psychology of the president. And before, like how the president was feeling or the emotions or if they were paranoid or not paranoid. At least I was not introduced to it by then. I mean, I was young enough that I didn't know enough about it. Then later on, a book was written about the Supreme Court and how the Supreme Court was affected by like what they had for breakfast, by like their spouse, by different biases and prejudice. So again, okay, so I'm not saying that all, teenagers were like that were my age at the time were thinking the same thing, but I can remember I thought that whatever the law is, that's what they decide. And it wasn't because they were really liberal or really conservative or strict constructionist or whatever it is. It's just how it is. And it didn't matter like what they had for breakfast. Why would that matter? Right? So I think the fact what Nixon did opened it up to the fact that the foibles of others was all of a sudden present too. So it opened everything up, dramatically changed different people's views.
I, Gerald R. Ford, President of the United States, pursuant to the pardon power conferred upon me by Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, have granted, and by these presents do grant, a full, free, and absolute pardon unto Richard Nixon for all offenses against the United States which he, Richard Nixon, has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from July 20, 1969 through August 9, 1974.
They must have a deal going on. There was some kind of collusion, conspiracy, that Ford must have been in on it for somehow to do this. However, Ford's just I remember my dad really liked Ford because Ford was a football player at Michigan, and Ford was a sharp guy, and they ended up doing all these things to embarrass Ford. But like, my dad was a lawyer, and he would talk about what a solid, smart, sharp person Ford was. But at the time, we just thought like, they're in on it together. They're in on it together, and obviously there was, the 60s happened before this, and all the things with LBJ and on, and then before that with Kennedy. So it wasn't like the world was a stranger to various, shenanigans going on. But now, I thought, wow, things aren't as pure as I thought they were growing up.